Welcome back. You're watching First Up here on India Today. Let's get your details of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Day 2 in Tokyo. The focus is on the Quad Summit that's currently underway. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with the President of the United States, the Japanese Prime Minister and the Australian Prime Minister are in a huddle. This is the second in-person meeting of Quad leaders during which they've exchanged views about developments in the Indo-Pacific region and global issues of mutual interest. Let's give you also details of what Prime Minister Modi said in his opening remarks, which he focused on the alliance and hailing the progress that they've made together. Prime Minister Modi has said that Quad has made an important place for itself before the world in such a short span of time. The Prime Minister also highlighted that the Quad's scope has become extensive while reiterating the shared goal of a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. Quad was, of course, formed largely seen to counter China's influence in the Indo-Pacific region. China has been fuming against the Quad Summit. They've time and again referred to it as a failed agenda. Time and again, they've watched very closely when these four world leaders have come together on one stage. As far as this meeting, today's meeting is concerned, the agenda is a range of topics: post-COVID recovery, the Ukraine war, which US President Joe Biden has already mentioned in his opening remarks. Another big issue is that of climate change. But the biggest message will be to China, particularly because of its aggression tactics, which India, Japan, everyone's faced. US President Joe Biden has already hardened his stance, saying that the US is ready to arm Taiwan in its defense against China's aggression, a message that Beijing won't take kindly to.
Prime Minister Modi, it's wonderful to see you again in person. Thank you for your continuing commitment to making sure democracies deliver, because that's what this is about, democracies versus autocracies, and we have to make sure we deliver.
So we're going to be playing out Prime Minister Modi's statement as well, his opening remarks, where he spoke about what the Quad Alliance means, saying that he's with his friends right now, and also talking about how in such a short span of time, the Quad has grown into an alliance that the world is watching out for. Let's play out exactly what the Prime Minister said.
Excellencies, इतने कम समय में क्वाड समूह ने विश्व पटल पर एक महत्वपूर्ण स्थान बना लिया है। आज क्वाड का स्कोप व्यापक हो गया है और स्वरूप प्रभावी हो गया है। हमारा आपसी विश्वास, हमारा डिटर्मिनेशन लोकतांत्रिक शक्तियों को नई ऊर्जा और उत्साह दे रहा है। क्वाड के स्तर पर हमारे आपसी सहयोग से एक फ्री, ओपन और इंक्लूसिव इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र को प्रोत्साहन मिल रहा है। कोविड-19 की विपरीत परिस्थितियों के बावजूद हमने वैक्सीन डिलीवरी, क्लाइमेट एक्शन, सप्लाई चेन रेजिलियंस, डिजास्टर रिस्पांस और आर्थिक सहयोग जैसे कई क्षेत्रों में आपसी समन्वय बढ़ाया है। इससे इंडो पैसिफिक में शांति, समृद्धि और स्थिरता सुनिश्चित हो रही है। क्वाड इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र के लिए एक कंस्ट्रक्टिव एजेंडा लेकर चल रहा है। इससे क्वाड की छवि एक फोर्स फॉर गुड के रूप में और भी सुदृढ़ होती जाएगी।
So those were some excerpts of what the Prime Minister had to say in his opening remarks. Let's take this across to Paulami Saha. She's joining us live from Tokyo. Also with us is our Foreign Affairs Editor, Geeta Mohan. Paulami, to you first. Is the Quad Summit, the meeting, still underway?
Yes, Akshita, the Quad Summit is still underway. The meeting is slotted for 2 hours. Which is currently underway. We, of course, got those opening remarks from Prime Minister Modi, also from US President Joe Biden, who, of course, made their sentiments very clear going into this very crucial meeting of the Quad Summit, which is, of course, the second in-person meeting of the Quad leaders. Quad, of course, as a grouping in terms of its activities, in terms of the meetings, has picked up a lot in the past couple of years. It has had 2 virtual conferences and 1 in-person conference so far. Up until now, this is the second in-person conference of the Quad leaders that is happening. Up until 2017, much activity wasn't noticed, but clearly, given the COVID scenario and of course the growing aggression of China that most countries are at the receiving end of in the Indo-Pacific region, you see that this grouping is now investing more time, is now investing more effort in strengthening the alliance as well. So this is going to be extremely significant. The takeaways that emerge out of this meeting are going to be extremely significant for us to, of course, read into in terms of how these leaders are, in fact, preparing to take on the growing belligerence of China in the region, in the Indo-Pacific region. We've already heard of a very strong statement that came in from Foreign Minister Wang Yi of China yesterday in response to the launch of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. And today, of course, with the Quad Summit meeting, which is not exactly a formal grouping, we expect that China is again going to reiterate the point that it was making yesterday, where it said that this Indo-Pacific strategy is inciting confrontation, I beg your pardon, undermining peace, and is essentially going to be a failed strategy. But the significance that China is laying on this, the significance of the fact that China is watching the developments here as they take place in Tokyo, just goes to show how important this summit is. Akshata.
Very, very true. And look at the images on your screens. That shows you how much progress has been made in a very, very short span of time as far as Quad is concerned. The bonhomie that you see between the four leaders there clearly establishes that. Geeta, I want to focus on India here and what we'll be looking for from this kind of an alliance. What are the tangible takeaways that India will be hoping for from that meeting that's underway?
Well, India has a huge interest when it comes to the entire Southeast Asian region and the Indo-Pacific region. We are not a part of the RCEP, and that has been a huge loss for India. That's the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement that has been signed between ASEAN nations and China. China has been affronting that for a while now, and it's the reason why India took a backseat on that one. But there is a huge interest in that entire region where China has been developing bilateral, multilateral ties. It is a regional bloc which is critical not just to India, but to every country that thinks of the Indo-Pacific as a theater that should be open, inclusive and free. And that's the reason why like-minded countries, that are these four countries, have come together. Akshita, it took a long time for them to really come to a leadership level meeting. Initially, there was hesitance from the Australian side. They had left the Quad, they rejoined. There was hesitance from the Indian side, given the Chinese belligerence. And finally, after COVID, all these countries came together when there was a realization on the critical supply chains that China controls and holds. In terms of naming, I do not see China being named in the Quad Summit communique because they've not named countries in the past as well. But the direction that Quad takes is not an anti-China direction, but one where China is told that these countries are going to come together. If there is aggression, belligerence, then that will be contained by these countries. Contained how? Economically. What are the areas and key areas of focus over here when the leaders are meeting? They are looking at maritime domain awareness. That's an initiative that will be initiated in this second Quad Summit.
Right.
Then they are looking at climate. They're looking at critical infrastructure, cybersecurity, securing the Indo-Pacific theater and the waters. These are areas that they're really going to focus on.
Okay, Geeta, Paul, me request both of you to stay on with us. Today is a very, very important day because you've got the Quad Summit happening. But beyond that, also in a few hours from now, will be the one-on-ones, will be the very, very important bilaterals. And one bilateral that everyone's going to be watching out for is that between Prime Minister Modi and US President Joe Biden. A step forward, essentially, to further strengthen mutual ties. Now, the talks between India and the United States in that bilateral will likely be on post-COVID pandemic recovery, building on health security, on climate action and creating a resilient US-India supply chain. Both world leaders have been in regular contact, virtually and in-person meets as well have taken place. The two leaders have met virtually on at least 3 occasions. The Quad Virtual Summit, in fact, in March 2021 was one such occasion. Besides that, the Climate Change Summit in April 2021, the G7 Summit as well in June 2021. The first in-person meeting between Prime Minister Modi and the POTUS took place in September last year when President Biden welcomed Prime Minister Modi in the Oval Office of the White House. That was the onset of a new chapter in the US-India story. So let's take this back across to Polemy. There's going to be a lot of focus, Polemy, on this particular bilateral. You know, in the start, I remember a few months ago, in the start of the Ukraine war, you had a number of statements that were made by the United States, seemingly that they were unhappy with how India wasn't taking a tough stand against Russia. That's all in the past now. Things have been ironed out. The US has gone on record to state that they acknowledge India's foreign policy.
Absolutely. You know, it was like you mentioned rightly, Akshata, that initially there was a little bit of resistance in accepting India's position. There was some criticism as well, which was made in certain quarters about why India isn't taking a very obvious position against the Russian aggression of Ukraine, while India maintained throughout at various fora, as we were discussing, at the United Nations Security Council, at the United Nations Human Rights Council as well, stating very categorically that India, in fact, wants an immediate cessation of violence and hostilities, and it wants both parties to come to the dialogue table, because that is the only way forward in trying to resolve this crisis and whatever differences exist between the two parties concerned. All of that was ironed out when External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, in fact, traveled to Washington in April for the 2+2 dialogue. India was able to communicate very comprehensively, very elaborately and articulately the position that India has taken and why India has taken its position. And in fact, that has been accepted just before President Biden, of course, entered Tokyo, and in fact, was to meet with the leaders of the Quad grouping. A question was asked in the White House as well to the press secretary about how President Biden is going to go into his meeting with Prime Minister Modi, given that India has not, in fact, taken a clear position as far as the Ukraine crisis is concerned. And the response was that India, the fact is that the White House understands that certain countries have their own interests, have their own histories, and have in fact taken positions based on that. US will continue to, of course, in one-on-one dialogues, in-person dialogues with every state, try to bring them on board in terms of understanding the reasoning behind the position that US is taking, but it understands and respects the decisions and the positions that countries are taking, especially this response was in the case of India. So India's position has been understood, has been respected as well. But yes, it will come up for conversation when US President Biden and Prime Minister Modi meet after lunch today for their bilateral.
And expect a condemnation. India is very, very clear that we're not for war. So expect a condemnation on that front in the joint statement as well. Polemy, Geeta, thank you very much for joining us this morning with all the details of what's to be expected as an outcome of the Quad Summit and also the crucial bilaterals that Prime Minister Modi will be a part of